I'm back. Of course, this is K24 This Morning. Look at the big stories of the day right here and taking your tweets, of course, at K24TV. Moses Musuya says, let's agree that Nairobi County government wants to be controlled by cartels. Right from water, land grabbing, revenue collection, any sane person should support Sonko for trying to fight cartels single-handedly. We thrive in corruption and anybody doing differently is fought. That's the view of that particular Nairobi citizen. Anthony Damajo saying, watching from Roiro, listening to this discussion, lakini public participation ni aje. Actually, funny, we were talking about that during the break. And it's a sentiment very many people hear, that term being bandied around, but they don't know how to actually participate as the public. Probably could talk about that also even as we get into this. And it provides a segue because we're looking at a point of view of the promises that have been made, what we're hoping we'll get from the particular government of the day. And it's lacking when you look at some aspects of it, covered on both the Daily Nation and in the Standard as well. Many unfulfilled promises, Jubilee stalled projects. It's a shame the billions of shillings are locked up in projects that benefit nobody. A survey done by the Nation has revealed numerous unfinished projects, with some having no more than a plaque announcing their launch. Jubilee's monument of broken promises, of course, everybody goes back to the stadium. Anytime our athletes do proud abroad, it always comes back home to how are we making sure we get the next human who is not limited, the next Kipchoge, the next Fatuma Zarika. And they have spoken about this. The DP actually this year said that it's not actually 8 stadia, it's going to be 11. So he pushed it up a notch. And the big question is, we haven't seen the first batch that you promised to completion. Renovation for some stadia has taken longer than Rwanda did to actually build one from scratch and finish it and start using it. So the big question is, where are we going wrong? Did they promise much more than they could deliver and now don't know how to backtrack on this? Where did the rain start beating them, Arnold?
Number one, to be fair, Jubilee overpromised. If you go back to the original Harmonized Manifesto in 2013, if you look at that document, it's full of utopia. There are a lot of promises that they will not meet. They took us to heaven, and because voters, at least in our jurisdiction, have not been very rational in making decisions, because our basis of mobilization, the mobilization philosophy, has always been around ethnicity, and it's not a bad thing, because it's a sense of identity that we begin with. So they overpromised. But even as they overpromised, there is also the problem that we cannot run away from. There are a lot of these projects who are mega projects, so they would put in a little bit of deposits of money, so much money. Like the Nation says, a lot of billions are locked into it and no one is benefiting from them. We know too well that most of them actually come with kickbacks. So it's also not far-fetched to say that it was so easy to push some of these things to be launched so that they are factored in, get the initial payment and people get their cut and get settled, but we no longer have had money to actually take care of that. I know that we've already spoken about the ceiling, the debt ceiling, raising to 9 trillion. And the technical idea that was actually sold to lawmakers was so simple, that we push up the ceiling so that we are able to restructure our debt and retire the commercial loans. As in, we sell them to somebody else so that then we have got enough time to breathe, organize, and then pay better. I'm just hoping that we've not done that so that now these guys can actually now get money to take care of these ghost projects, most of them that didn't come through with the public participation. But going back to that, somebody has already asked why we bandied that word around and there's no way how people can actually, when talk about public participation. Already, going to an election is public participation. And participating in the process that brings out leadership is a serious business. We actually need to tell people that politics is serious business. So you do not just run around and say you are taking a little bit of handouts here and there, choose somebody, and then the following week you start complaining, and then you blame everybody. We must also look in the mirror and say that we have seen our problem, and that problem is us. Right. So it starts with us as a people. Public participation, there are a lot of opportunities out there. If you went to your chief's office, there are always announcements on what is being done here, visiting your MCA's office, being online. We do everything online. There is a lot of hate speech we do. We cannot be online doing a lot of hate speech and bullying everybody, but we have no opportunity to actually just organize and push through the agendas. I need to bring this home and tell our viewers that you do not need a lot of people to bring change in your community. You don't have to wait for elections to bring change in your community. A research by BBC actually says that if you change can actually be brought about by just 3.5%. Like in Nairobi, just about 100,000 people, if they wanted change in Nairobi, we don't like how the county assembly is doing things. We don't like how the executive is conducting business. We literally don't like how the county government is doing its affairs. Just 100,000 people out of the 4 million can actually change this city. We don't need 1 million people to bring change in Kenya. Just about 700,000 people in their different ways. If you do not need 10%, we're talking about 3%. So we have got the power. There are opportunities. Civil society organizations out there are organizing. So it's for us to stop lamenting, to stop agonizing, and organize in our small bits. If you need change, it comes from bottom up. But to wait for a messiah to come from somewhere and bring about this change will not happen. Okay. It will have to happen with us at our individual spaces, in our small places where we work, and how we make decisions.
Okay, and even as I want you to touch on the public participation aspect of it as well, because that's something you're always dealing with the youth. But as we talk about this particular story, and it's on page 8 and 9 of your Daily Nation, shame of billions locked in stalled projects. There's an issue they're talking about here in one particular project where, and this is in Nyakora in Kisii County, where the DP launched the water project, and the water project ran for a grand total of 2 hours. After that, they haven't seen water since the DP left that particular area. Some accounts and somebody saying a source close to this particular project said there's a bowser that brought water in the dead of the night to make sure that as they launched it, there would be water running. And once the tank ran out of water, they moved out of that particular area. Once you see such instances being brought to the fore, do you really think this government is honest in terms of even delivering half or quarter of what they promised, if this is what they would do, if this story is anything to go by?
Oh my goodness, that's insane. It even makes me wonder whether a deputy president knew that until today, because even maybe he thinks it was working. But it's unfortunate. I think for me, what hurts the most with this current administration is the way they played the youth card. And for it to now exist and completely, frankly, insult young people. And the fact that we're even talking about stadium or even access to water, which is a basic social right in our Constitution, 43. So that means we have to have access to water, to healthcare, things like that. The basic needs that we're to have are difficult to come by. So even when we see the stories and how it reads in the Nation, shame of billions locked in stalled projects, that's billions. And every time when we engage with youth, they can't even fathom what 1 billion looks like. I can't even fathom what 1 billion looks like. It's just too big to imagine. But the fact that that's how much we are losing, in fact, we can say that we are losing it monthly. And then we, at the same breath, we're talking about youth being unemployed, to where now when we talk about the different opportunities that are available, there are none. And that is something that it continues to anger. And I believe that the media is trying to highlight the situation, but also it's in a space where how it's being translated, it's not that simple to understand. Because as much as we know that there are billions being lost, to the local individual living in the village, what is 1 billion? Right. When coming by 1,000 is difficult enough. So I think that what we should be concerned about is the processes. We're talking about integrity. We're talking about procurement issues. We're talking about accountability, because there was a person involved in that who knew that was what was happening, who okayed it, who flagged it off and let it go. And this is where the public participation comes in.
Right. How do we participate publicly?
The people living in these communities should be able to go to their county offices and report, even someone as low as the chief or the CEC, when we're talking about water and things like that. Because even with our work in Busia, we found that a lot of times information doesn't come back, or even if that it does, not every single person working within government is a terrible person. There are people in there who want the best for their communities, but they also need support from their community. And so they lack that information. And so if we had people who, I think we have this attitude where when we see something bad happening, we're just like, oh, Kenya, vitu vina happen hivyo. Like, we just feel this helplessness where we're saying, let's just wait and hope somebody fixes it. So something as simple as reporting, people being angered about it, people going and talking about where is this thing not producing any water, reaching out to media stations like yours and being able to highlight those scenarios. Who is responsible for this? Who was in charge of this? And things like that. So for it to wait for this long to happen, yet it only had water for what? 2 weeks?
Right, 2 hours.
2 hours.
2 hours of that particular event.
No.
After that, nothing was seen.
No.
Fred, we're looking at a scenario where we've spoken about such instances, but also in the Standard, they're talking about athletes being abandoned. And it was a promise. I'm sure that clip, you've seen it very many times. Anytime you talk about Jubilee's promises, you go back to that particular promise that was made, and they spoke about the timelines that will be done. Recently, of course, we had the DP on Punchline on K24, and he said it's not 8, it's actually 11 stadia. But this, I think, is the apt place to say kwa ground vitu ni very different, awfully different.
You see, politicians have got a habit of over-promising. And they don't change the narrative midway. It is unfortunate. They love to stick to it and lie straight on your eye, and you believe it. But it's well tied to the issues of public participation that I really want to talk about. But before I do that, I want to say that it is sad to promise the people of Kenya certain aspects of development and then give them timelines, because all these development projects are time-bound. They must be done within a certain time. If that doesn't happen, then you become a liar. And who would want to be led by a liar? No one. Number two, the public must now know how they should be involved in development project, whether it is promised or it is a right. They should know. Because there are so many, when people talk about public participation, there's something they forget, that it is a process that has got 4 stages. You must inform, first of all, the people, the public, inform them. What are the issues that we need to address, like those stadia? We need to address, they want to build them here, that project of water in Kisii. Then you must now involve them. Then you must collaborate with them. And then you must now engage them. In engaging them, you must ensure that their views make it to the final decision. But in the Constitution of Kenya, we also have what we call the constitutional and legal requirements of public participation. Because, even from Article 1, when the Constitution says that the sovereign power belongs to the people, that is public participation. You go all the way to Article 10, national values. You go to objects of devolution that requires that the people must be engaged, to principle of public finance by engaging the public. The PMF Act, all those require the public. But the people will always complain because the avenue to public participation has been blocked. They do it in a shoddy way, and then the project stalls. If it was a transparent way where the people are informed, involved, collaborating, and engaged, then they would be highlighting this even before the media comes. They say, we were promised this, we gave our views, we have not seen it. But look, here is a case where the media goes and finds something that was launched several years ago, and then the people say, look, wait a minute, this was happening. How didn't we know? Now, I think this government of Jubilee has managed Kenyans through a lot of PR. And that PR is now coming out as a lie a few years to the other election. Kenyans have realized it was all a lie. And we have said, kwa ground vitu ni different. When you go to the ground, those projects that were promised, they are not there. And if they are there, they are not functioning. And that means money was spent or halfway, and they're now white elephants. That is not prudent use of public finance. We have failed. We must agree as a government and as a people, we have failed. We have failed to put these people into account. The leadership has failed to deliver, and the people must now come out and demand for these services. Because how do you explain that this project of water was launched working? Then 2 hours, it is now not working. Who is fooling who?
Arnold, let me ask you this, because we're looking at a scenario where we can count the number of promises that were made, as you said, from utopia, and weren't going to see the light of the day. We have 2 years left for this, or thereabout, in terms of the Jubilee administration, and we have a new set of promises under the guise of the Big Four. What's the likelihood of that being achieved? Because this time round, people said that it has to happen because it's Uhuru Kenyatta's legacy. Does he cement his legacy in a positive way?
Unless he's going to miraculously increase his term. Like I said when we started, the Big Four is a mirage. It's not going to happen. So we are in a situation where, like I said, the government overpromised. We actually have had a very experimentalist regime They like to do try and error and using a lot of money at that. So, and it's costing us. So at this particular time, I do not think that Big Four is a priority, not even BBI or the promises they are making. It's actually to rein in a tanking economy, bring it to stability first of all, before we start talking about any of these promises. You spoke about our sportsmen being forsaken. Jubilee has actually forsaken a lot of those people that mean so much to this country, starting with our sportsmen. It has always been a habit in this country that sports are taken very lightly. And you know, those are our first ambassadors out there. If there are people who have sold Kenya so well other than tea, our tea and coffee, they've been sports people. So you look around and every day our sports people are stranded in hotels, they are stranded at airports, they are reaching in way late. And people are in offices. We have got PSS and CSS who shamelessly are walking around looking very smart. In other countries, they will actually commit suicide. But we have allowed them to actually feel that way. It's the same thing with the youth. The people, by the way, this government came to power flying on the wings of youth, analog versus digital. But if there are any people who have suffered the brand of betrayal by this regime, they are young people. Nothing works. They keep on just changing things left and right. But finally, we must say this, that it is so wrong. You know, when we talk about stadia, it's because never before in the history of this country has anybody lied, somebody so senior has so lied straight through the teeth, looking at the nation and saying, we are now moving from 5, we will actually make them 9, just to make them look good. Now, the other day, speaking to Anne, he says that we will move them to 11. Really, are we children? As in, you take a nation and you turn the whole public, as in, we are stupid, you do not do 5, you say you will do 9, and the latest they will take is 6 months. It's actually about 30 months later on. Nothing has happened, and now you're moving them to 11. And because nothing is happening, you're telling us that when I show up in 2022, it will work. I think we need to stop this nonsense. Right. Get angry and just tell them, if these guys are not given chance, but unfortunately, they are all over churches and places where we cannot ask them because God will show up and deal with us. But it's time we stopped this nonsense.
And let's talk about what you said there in terms of, you know, the stadia athletes, and specifically a viral video that has gone around over the weekend of Fatuma Zarika. I don't know if you got a chance to watch it and how she spoke about the fact that, yes, she lost that match, but it's better for the belt to be in Mexico, where at least it'll be taken care of, the athletes are taken care of, because as far as she's concerned, after Sport Pesa was taken out of this, ministry has never come in to take care of that.
Right.
She'll get her money and she'd move on from there. And there was a lot of public sentiment as to where patriotism falls in all of this. But also the question of the ministry. Should the ministry take any brand, bear any brand for such utterances from a very talented athlete?
I'm actually very proud of Fatuma. She has done what so many of us cannot do, to speak up. So many of us are actually just complaining and we cannot tell truth to power. We are at a place where the power must be told the truth, especially the people in the ministry. I don't know what the PS is doing, and the president actually finds sleep when such is happening elsewhere. Fatuma has actually held that belt for quite a while. She's represented as well. We have cheered her. But she clearly says that when Sports Pesa, she did not even, and she spoke about not having opportunity to practice and prepare well. There were no resources around that. And we knew we were holding that. We are not going to actually just sit back. In America, it actually has been happening. When people are told stand up and salute the flag or rather sing to the national anthem, they've actually been kneeling as a protest. She protested, and we should actually encourage a lot of that so that people do not get comfortable. What happens normally is that our athletes out there are messed, and then when it's highlighted online, they are called and threatened, and then they retract. That happens a lot. I have got a sister who runs. She's deaf, but she's been representing Kenya in the Deaf Olympics. She's a teacher. And every time they go out, I have always heard, at least because I worked in government, to actually keep on calling people. These guys are stuck in Turkey. And literally now that, because I have got an opportunity to speak in such like places, that whole group thinks that I will reach out to people and I will call people telling they are stuck in Turkey, they are supposed to be going to Hungary. And every other day that keeps on happening. And the PS shows up shamelessly and says there's nothing wrong. He still wakes up in the morning, and we give them opportunity. If the sports people of this country were serious, it doesn't matter whatever talent you are in. If the administration of the day, and specifically the agency that takes care of you, is actually not functioning, your talent will not take you anywhere. Why should they not go to Kencom second floor and just a little bit show these guys that we mean business? Because there are no other jobs. Now people have got talent and now we are now mismanaging them. The guys at Kencom must wake up. Amina must actually stand up and either go home or do something about it. We cannot have a PS who every day gets round and we just let him go away with it.
Fred, you saw that particular video and she wasn't mincing her words right there. What do you think about it?
Zarika is very patriotic. We cannot wish away that. But as a sports person or as an athlete who also should earn from her talent, she has a right to speak like any other Kenyan. She did well, and we congratulate her for that. But it's not just Zarika. We have seen Harambee Starlet the other day was stuck in Misri. And the government came out saying that that is fake news. You know, we have seen our rugby boys getting stuck. We have seen our sportsmen sleeping in boardrooms. We have seen our sportsmen sleeping during the layover in airports on the floor. So this is something that has been happening. And it's about leadership. You know, we cannot run away from the fact that we have mistreated the people of Kenya. We have mistreated our athletes. We have mistreated our footballers. Today, we have got a big issue in FKF. You have seen that. Mismanagement of funds. We have mistreated them. And all these are issues that are revolving around the government. It's about integrity. So for me, I think that it is time that Kenyans should speak up. The sportsmen and women of this country who have held that flag and held it high must speak out. Most of them, interestingly, are young people. They must speak out. They have the numbers. And such things happen and you see the online community coming out together and say, by the way, this is wrong and it is wrong. The government on the other side of the corner saying, no, let's get the facts right. The media reporting it, we were misquoted. You know, we must now start to do things right. And the only way that we're going to do things right is if we speak out and speak the truth. So I would urge all sportsmen and women out there, if you see something wrong that is not happening, speak out. We have seen instances where the sportsmen were promised 50 million when you do certain things, when you achieve certain things. Some of those money they have never received to date. And they're just keeping quiet because whoever said is so powerful and they don't want to antagonize that promise. No, you must speak out.
Nerima, it's funny because this particular PS in charge of this docket, last week and the week before that, having serious counter-accusations with him and FKF over sabotaging the Stars and their work right there in the Starlets. He was present at the Sagana retreat as well and was on the list of the VIPs right there. A retreat that over the weekend, one of the most important things in his docket, Fatuma Zarika, had been ignored. Where are we going wrong when it comes to this? Because clearly, the president at this particular point in time should have actually summoned the PS and asked him, what's going on in your ministry?
I think listening to both Fred and Arnold, we understand how dire the situation is, but I admire our sportsmen and women. In fact, they inspire me. The fact that they're able to succeed in an environment internationally that does not support them at home, locally. And one of the things that really, well, there are two things that I believe that really bring us together, and that's our sports. You know, we cannot forget when we were even supporting Eliud Kipchoge and how people, their lives were at a standstill just to watch him running. And we see that in any Olympics, we see that in major races where we do highlight them on the front page of our papers and all that good stuff. The other thing where we come together is during tragedies, where, especially if there are major ones, where we will donate and see how we can support one another. Right. And what's worrying is the conversation on patriotism. How do you teach, like Fred just mentioned, how a lot of them are young. How do you teach young people to be patriotic when they feel that their own country doesn't love them? How do you teach young people to build a country where you feel that it's so difficult to build here? Where we're having conversations with youth where they're talking about it's easier to live outside than to be a Kenyan. When we're seeing stories of people going inside an airplane, risking their life and dying because they see that there's better opportunity out there than here. So it's a very tough ground. And the fact that we're seeing sportsmen and women, they've been living in this situation for decades, where they're now being open about it and saying that enough is a big rallying call to our president, to his administration, because people are saying it's too much, and it's getting to a point where it's pinching to the point where we cannot live like this anymore.
Right.
And I think it's encouraging for me to see that.
Okay. We'll have to leave it at that particular point as far as our newspaper review is concerned this morning. The conversation, as always, continues online. You can get us at K24 TV. Alternatively, you can SMS us on 21222. Thank you so much, Arnold Maliba, for making time this morning. Freddy Kokango, Nerima Wako, for going through the big stories of the day. We take a short break. We're back on the other side as we get interactive. Good morning.